On Friday, Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson signed into law legislation allowing doctors to refuse to treat someone because of religious or moral objections. Now, this is a move that will give providers broad powers to turn away LGBTQ patients, and that's really all this is about. It's homophobia. Now, we can shroud it in religious language, but it's basically, I don't want to touch someone who has a lifestyle or an orientation different than me or something that I don't understand. Now, I'm not going to go into the Hippocratic Oath taken by all doctors to treat all human beings. This law was done to allow those with religious objections to not treat the LGBTQ community. I'm guessing, being this is Arkansas, we're not talking about, Shintos, we're not talking about Hindus, we're not talking about Muslims, we're not talking about Jewish people, we're not even talking about the Catholic faith. We're pretty much talking about conservative right-wing Christianity, Protestantism. And I want to tell you something, I'm not speaking out of my ass. I read the Bible 17 times, cover to cover, between the ages of 14 and 28. Ask your pastor how many times they've read the Bible in their lifetime. Very few will say, I've read it 17 times cover to cover. I was a Bible nerd. I have an undergraduate degree in theology from a Southern Baptist university, and I have a graduate degree in religious education from a Southern Baptist seminary, and I spent 10 years as a Southern Baptist minister. I know what I'm talking about. Now, one of the problems that I had, the biggest problem I had with Christianity, the biggest reason why I left, was the complete and total lack of compassion. And I don't do this anymore. I don't preach sermons and I don't tell people how to live their lives. But I do want to talk two biblical stories. The first is reported to be an actual story from the life of Jesus, and the second is a parable reported to have been told from Jesus. In John chapter 4, we have a story of the woman at the well. A woman comes to a well during the day when nobody else is going to the well because she is a woman of loose morals, let's put it that way. And Jesus is sitting there by the well, and Jesus says, "Can you get me a drink?" And she says, "Well, I don't know, should I get you a drink?" So on and so forth, and they have some exchange. This woman is what is known as a Samaritan. Now, the Samaritans were Jewish people who in their history had interbred with the locals, and they were half-breeds, they were Samaritans. The Jewish people had tremendous animosity, racial animosity towards the Samaritan people for soiling their lineage by interbreeding with the locals. So this woman of loose morals, who is also, by the Jewish standards, really kind of a subhuman being at the time, Jesus starts talking to her, and they get into a religious debate, and she says, we're not allowed to worship in Jerusalem. We have to worship in our own place because, we're the Samaritans, so on and so forth. But Jesus told her a little bit about her life and said that he's got water that, she drinks from, she'll never thirst again. And I'm not going to go into the spiritual realm of that. But what I am going to do is just boil it down to this. Jesus talked to a Samaritan woman, and he met her where she was, and he had compassion on her. This is someone he had no business having compassion on, being he was a Jewish rabbi. Second story I want to talk about is from Luke chapter 10. It's the story of the Good Samaritan. There was a traveler, a traveler going from Jericho to Jerusalem, and it's a windy road, and it's a harsh travel, and there were bandits that would be at the road, and these bandits got a hold of this guy and beat him half to death. So he's laying there at the side of the road, and a priest goes by. The priest walks by and ignores the person that's been beaten on the side of the road. And then a Levite, what's a Levite? A Levite, someone that assisted the priest in temple worship. A Levite walks by, and he kind of just walks by like, I don't want to get involved in this. But then a Samaritan these subhuman people, goes by the traveler and has compassion, binds the wounds, dresses him, takes him to an inn, and tells the innkeeper, here's 2 days' wages that I have, keep him here. And if he needs to stay longer, let me know, just bill me and I'll pay the rest. Those are stories of compassion. Those are stories of compassion from the life of Jesus towards people who, at his time and place, he shouldn't have had compassion for. This is my problem with Christians: a complete and total lack of compassion. I left Christianity. Now, I started questioning my faith as a freshman in high school when I first read the first 2 chapters of the book of Genesis, and I realized, wow, there are 2 creation stories here, and they're completely different. Being raised a strict inerrantist, this was troubling, as were other portions of the Old and New Testament that I read. So I have spent my life struggling with the faith that I grew up with, and the theology that I picked up, and the realities that I picked up from reading the Bible. But through all that, I stayed with the church. I stayed with Christianity. But I guess it's been about 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, I left the faith, and I haven't looked back. And the reason I left the faith wasn't because of theological reasons, because somehow I could struggle with those. The straw that made me leave the faith is we now live in a world where being an elitist, judgmental person takes precedence over compassion towards all people. So I don't know Governor Asa Hutchinson. I don't know the religious belief or anything like that, but I do know what's powering this bill. I do know what has powered our nation for the past 4 years. Right-wing, conservative Christians who really have no compassion.